Hello, today's video is called We Were Looking Kijiji for Heavy Tow Trucks. Today is day 13 of the public inquiry to the federal government for invoking the Emergency Act on February 2022. Today is October 31st, 2022. The agenda for today's overview, key details, today's witness, and my point of view. We're doing the summary of the testimonies in this inquiry that seeks to understand if Justin Castro had valid reasons to invoke the Emergency Act and also if the powers that he used were exceeding the scope that were granted by the Act itself. Based on these findings, the lead commissioner will put forward a recommendation in both English and French by February of 2023. Remember, this is not a trial, it's an inquiry. All my work can be found in Lisa Bruce Research on YouTube, as well as my own website, lisabruceresearch.com, and the link to hear the inquiry live is shown below. Some key details to help to understand the testimonies. Here are all the jurisdictions that were interacting on the ground, as well as the short forms. Here's a quick timeline. Here are the key locations of all the major events. Here is a list of things that are required to invoke the Emergency Act. And today, witness was ex-chief of police Peter Sloly. The witness was on the stand between 9:30 and 6:20 p.m. And here we're going to see that he's going to start the cross-examination. So last Friday was the direct by the commissioner counselor, and today the Ottawa police started, and they were trying to put together the timeline of the incident and chief commander, which was actually very useful for me because up to this point it was not very clear. So here you can see the dates and the names as to why they were being replaced. You can see it's less than ideal. There's a lot of change in a very short period of time. And then there was a moment on which they're pulling a lot of documents, and then there was a level of aggressiveness from the Ottawa police towards Sloly, saying, well, you were afraid you would lose your job and you were looking to blame somebody else. So even the lead commissioner and his own lawyer came to, quote, defend him because he was not even allowed to answer the question. So it's obviously not very out of the question why this is happening, because the Ottawa police is interested in blaming him and only him for all the failure in the interaction. Now here it's a little bit of denying the intention of Ferguson notes, because clearly they were pulling notes from, you may remember this witness from the previous days, on which we were looking into the fact that she was stating in different documents throughout different days that she was losing a lot of confidence in the abilities of Sloly in managing the situation. Obviously, there were a lot of more interventions and trying to save him from talking about a lot of things that were being very aggressively presented to him. One interesting part of the conversation was when they presented a check for almost $200,000 from a company called Navigator, and in theory they provide communication advice, but if you go a little bit deeper, and thanks to this amazing channel, if you want to go deeper into details, this gentleman does a very good job analyzing, because he actually stays the whole day with the audience, which I really cannot do. So he was talking about these Navigator and ASI companies, that they do something called sentiment analysis that is nothing more complicated than spying on social media, how we all feel about different events. Then they compile it in artificial intelligence, and then they measure in terms of happiness and unhappiness what is the current, quote, mood about any type of current event. So more than communication help, I think that what they're doing is spying on us and giving the police officers different information about what is happening in social media. Please see my posts analyzing body ratios to understand this at a deeper level, because here are the images that will indicate to you that something bigger is going on underneath. So the channel that I just mentioned doesn't go into these, quote, conspiracy theories, but I do. So if you can look at my previous posts, you will see, and even in today's Twitter, I posted the image that is shown here analyzing, so you can go deeper into what is happening between the government of Canada and this company. Now, in terms of more cross-examination, you can see how there were a lot of aggressiveness, and I think that he was let go, among other things, because of his lack of appropriate interaction with others, and I found his behavior on the stand extremely calm and polite, which felt very fake to me. And I think that he was very prompt to react. And obviously, there are a lot of notes from different witnesses and people who are not going to take the stand that prove that he was really harsh with others. Here we can see more information from the Ottawa police, and everything that was placed in front of him in terms of notes from other people. He was saying it was a rumor, or people were just saying that, but it was not true. And then there's no proof of this and no proof of that. So I don't know. Today I just lost all confidence about him telling the truth about anything. It was really difficult for me to listen. It was very lengthy and not very fruitful. In my opinion, it was just a waste of time. Here, there was an interesting moment on when he was asked by Ottawa police if he had erased all his texts before handing the phone to the IT department of the police force, and then Sloly said that he didn't. What I found interesting is that obviously in a future examination, you're going to hear that obviously if they wanted to recuperate any kind of text, you can just go directly to a company that is the provider, and they can simply reach all the information. So even if he erased it, which I don't know if he did or not, it was not impossible to recuperate. So there's not a lot of point. Cross-examination by the convoy counselor. I was very unimpressed. He was just giving Sloly so much love, when in reality, we do know how poorly the convoy and the overall truckers were treated. So not impressed with him today. I've had a lot of positive feelings for the convoy counselor in the past week, not today. And he started the, quote, conversation saying, oh, I'm so sorry about the things that have happened to you after you resign. It just doesn't sound fair to me. A lot of smiles and things like that. And I was not impressed. So I just don't even think that he was very useful. In my opinion, they was just confirming that there were some barricades put it on, like everybody knows that. So nothing really interesting to me. Here from the government of Canada, they were talking about the fact that this number here and this number there, they were almost 30 minutes discussing numbers, which makes absolutely no sense. Again, no added value today from this type of conversation. Were they 50 officer that they said, no, it was maybe 55. Well, I don't know. There's a document that says 60. Well, here's another document that says 55. I just can't even deal with this type of inaccuracy. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's a waste of time. And then he constantly, once again, says, oh, I stand corrected. But my recollection is this and that. So again, he's just distancing himself from every word that he says, it's just a mechanism to avoid responsibility. So I don't understand. And then he literally said, this is the title of the video today, we were looking on Kijiji to find heavy tow trucks. Like, who says that? Like, even if it's true, just don't say it. It's just embarrassing. It was really bad today. Here we have from the city of Ottawa, lack of clarity on the language that he was communicating with his team obviously created issues. So he would say things like, and we've heard of this in previous days, anyone who's against the plan will be crushed, and things like that. So clearly a person who's not understanding fully or is tired, I mean, everybody's working 24/7 according to him. So any type of lack of clarity will lead to miscommunication and misunderstanding. So I think that he did a very poor job being precise about what he meant about that. And again, he doesn't acknowledge. He said, oh, everybody should have asked if they were confused. So today was just, honestly, you'll see it in my recap, it's just a constant lack of even minor responsibility and accountability. So his behavior was really odd with the Ottawa residents' businesses. He was just not understanding the question and saying, can you please ask again? And then he would say, oh, you probably said it right the first time. My ears are slowly catching up. It's just, I don't know why he would be so odd on the stand today. Like, why is he talking like that? It feels very fake, as I said. And then here you can see how he's reiterating that the community was traumatized. They were victimized in micro locations because the downtown core and what is called the red zone was only 1% of the city. But it's just so, I don't know. He even talked about the fist bumps between the police officers and the demonstrators, saying that it was only, quote, utilitarian, in the sense that it was just to calm them down. And he used the word nefarious, and some were more nefarious. I don't know what he meant by that. It's just not very accurate. I'm 100% sure there were a lot of police officers who didn't do it to calm anyone, because nobody was attacking the police officers based on the videos we have, based on my visit to the convoy. Now here, you can see how he's using systemic racism, white supremacists, extremists. He uses those words, so obviously it's inflammatory. If he uses that in this witness stand, I don't even want to imagine how he talks when nobody's taping him. Here you can see the OPP, some texts proving that Sloly was in communication with Carrick. So it's a little bit of, I'm not going to say that Carrick was not telling the truth on the stand, but it's a little bit of contradiction, because I think that either Carrick was telling too Sloly that he was doing great when in reality he was not feeling that, which is a little bit of a misleading situation. So that was confusing, but there are texts that show that Carrick was very supportive of Sloly until the last minute. Here, the Canadian Constitution Foundation. I think that it was clear from this portion that it's not clear who is the boss of the chief of police. He's being pulled in many directions. He receives recommendations from the mayor, receives information from Carrick. He receives direction from the board. It's just, I wouldn't be able to cope. Like, who is my boss? What is my direction? What is the approval of the plan? So it's just the structure in the police force seems very confusing. And if it's confusing, even with a lot of people trying to explain it, you can imagine a person that is being pulled out of one jurisdiction, thrown in the middle of this situation without understanding of who you report to who, clearly is going to be a problem. That's obviously the case. Here you had some more cross-examination of the Canadian Liberties Association, the Justice Center Constitutional Freedom, and then truly nothing interesting. And then we had the government of Alberta. Honestly, the whole 5 minutes that this lady had allocated, they were just pulling documents and then slowly said, oh, thank you for allowing me to read. And then she said, well, I have only 5 minutes. Can we please remove those 5 minutes from my time? And then the lead counselor did not say yes or no. And he kept on saying, go, scroll down, scroll up. And he read all these things that you can see on the screen. And then her time was up. There was no questions. A really bad day. Now here, Sloly, now we're talking about his own lawyer. When Dean said that the honeymoon, remember that Zion Deans is the chief of the board, and in theory, quote, his boss somehow. I think that's the boss. Honeymoon was short after you joined the force. Yes, he agreed. February 14, the meeting with Deans. Actually, it was not a meeting. I think it was more a phone call. The invocation of the act and enforce the tow trucks was not your best. That was not your best strategy, kind of thing. But what do you think that you could have done better? And then he said, well, my number of meetings, because I was working from 4 a.m. to 11 p.m. And I'm thinking, so your defect, the way you self-analyze your failure, is to say that you work too hard. Well, it just sounds very political. And then he started to use words and phrases that are just cliches, in my opinion. The marginalized communities. Did you experience racism as the chief of police? Of course. I mean, everybody uses the R word just to get away from any responsibility. And I wrote here, racism is an excuse for lacking competent confidence and doing an adequate job. So it's not because I am not doing my job, it's because the level of blackness in my skin creates negative reactions. No, I don't think that's really an accurate statement. So they're just trying to explain everything based on perception that includes the operation of somebody else's mind. So here, I didn't like that every time the counselor was asking a question, he would say, oh, thank you very much, sir. He's so submissive on the stand. That's not his personality. So it's an act, and that annoys me because obviously if you lie in the little, you lie in the big. So here you say, well, what steps do you take to maximize the resources that you have? He said, well, I increased the overtime. I canceled my COVID reserve, the platoon, because we could have a platoon in reserve because they could be wiped out by COVID. Like, oh my God. Like, I don't even understand. Now here he admitted that the coldest nights were happening throughout that week. negative 25 degrees, negative 35 degrees, frostbite for the majority of the day. So it's really telling about the bravery and the courageous action of the truckers, because they went in this city knowing what the weather was going to be. So again, thank you very much for everyone who stood for our rights. As everybody knows, I visited Ottawa, and I honestly stayed less than 2 hours. It was so cold, I couldn't even take it. So, and I visited at noon, which is the best time. So thank you very much for everyone who stood there for us. He asked about, remember this question that he raised to when Abrams was on the stand, and Sloly counsel was very aggressive to him, saying that Sloly never said in the call that if you need 100, ask for 200. That infamous conversation. So he brought that up and he said, no, I never said that. Of course, he never said that. Like, he's not going to admit, of course. They went deeper into the navigator role, and they said that they originally was engaging that company because there was an internal misogyny. I can't even pronounce that word very well. I dislike all these labels that they just diffuse the conversation and they don't go anywhere. Did you surrender the phone to the OPS? Yes. And then they were just going through the dramatic events of his actual resignation. And then he said something so silly. It was very inappropriate because I got the call at 9:30 p.m. in Valentine's Day, and and these were his words, I was in the bedroom with my wife. Too much information. You shouldn't have said that. And she said at the end of the call, well, think about it. So clearly, he said, she was pushing me to resign, and it still hurts me and my family. As you may remember, he actually cried on the stand on Friday, which I think it was an act, and I said that on that day. Here I thought, oh, here we go. He's going to do the same. In the redirect, you can see how they're trying to establish that the city workers could have been swarmed, and they were starting to talk about skateboards. I just honestly thought it was a mess. Tomorrow, by the way, I have to be working in the office, so I don't even think I'm going to be able to do a proper video. But this level of details, it just makes me question if it's really worth my time to keep on listening to this, because it's just so absurd. Here you can see that the lead commissioner, was doing a little bit of a redirect, trying to understand the plan. And actually, I think it was really useful, because now I see you had the plan from the 29th, then on the 31st, there was an iteration. Then on February 5th, there was the 2.0 version, February 8 to 9, integrated 3.0. So you can see how it could be very confusing for everyone. So what is the plan? It was as they call, fluid plan. I don't know. That's not how I work. I work with precision. So if they are not clear about that, if the lead commissioner is not clear about this on day 13, that we are 13 or 14, that we are already, explain to me how these people that receive a sticker according to Sloly would understand the plan. It's not possible. Patterson won't be able to testify due to medical reasons. The Commissioner Counsel announced that he had 2 independent doctors making an assessment, and both determined that he was not going to be able to testify. I don't know if he's ill or something, because he was suspended in June with pay. So I don't know. That's what they said. And here you can see the list of the rest of the witnesses for this week. We are done with the OPS witnesses. So now we're going to start to talk with the convoy organizers. So everybody is going to start to be on the stand talking about their perspective. So it's going to be very interesting. Tomorrow it's going to be crazy for me. So I don't know how I'm going to make it, but I will try to continue doing these videos for those of you who are interested in my point of view. I give him minus 20 over 10. Nothing was his fault. Is the cat ate my homework mentality? Was he set up? I think so. Was he a good chief of police? I don't think so. Thank you very much for listening.